3 chambers in the amphibian, in the frog. So here is the left atrium. The right atrium on this frog is kind of hidden. It's back here. Okay, most of you have it where it's in front. And then the ventricle is here. So blood's pumped into the heart via this big vessel. What is that? Sinus venosus. Sinus venosus, okay. And then into the right atrium, ventricle, up through the circulation. Some blood is pumped back from the lungs into the left atrium, back to the ventricle, and up through the circulation again. So there's blood mixing. There's deoxygenated blood mixing with oxygenated blood, and that's not very efficient, but the frog has a way of oxygenating its blood through the skin, and we'll get that when we do both of our passes through the ventricle. Okay, so from the ventricle, blood will then travel into this big artery here, the conus arteriosus. And the conus arteriosus splits off into 2 branches, a right truncus arteriosus and a left truncus arteriosus. Now, I just dissected the left vessels coming off the truncus arteriosus, but bear in mind that the right truncus will have the same vessels, okay? So I'll show each of these branches to all of your phones, okay? So the left truncus arteriosus is here, and what you want to do is from the left truncus, you're going to start peeling away all of this tissue until you identify 3 branches. So there's an anterior branch here, a middle branch here, and then a lower or posterior branch. So this first branch is the carotid trunk arch, carotid arch, okay? It's the carotid arch. The second branch here is the systemic arch, and the third branch here is the pulmocutaneous arch. So there are 3 branches: carotid arch, systemic arch, and pulmocutaneous arch. So the anterior-most arch, the carotid arch, will branch into 2 carotid arteries. The top or most anterior one is the external carotid, and the posterior one with this big bulb is the internal carotid. That big bulb is the carotid body, and that's where pressure, carbon dioxide, and oxygen levels are measured coming from the heart. Okay, so here's the external carotid artery and internal carotid artery with carotid body. External carotid artery, internal carotid artery with carotid body. Okay, now the middle branch is this branch. This is the systemic branch or systemic arch, right here in the middle. We're going to pick that up down here. Okay, so the systemic arch from each side, here's the right systemic arch and the left systemic arch, they're going to turn down to the truncus arteriosus on each side and then meld into the dorsal aorta. Okay, and then our very most posterior branch is this one, the pulmocutaneous arch, and it too has 2 branches. This more anterior branch, which is going to the skin, that's the cutaneous artery, and this one that turns down into this lung here, this is the pulmonary artery. Okay, so we have our pulmocutaneous arch that has 2 branches, the cutaneous artery and then the pulmonary artery. Okay? All right, so we have conus arteriosus, truncus arteriosus, carotid arch with external and internal carotid artery and carotid body, systemic arch, and then pulmocutaneous arch with the cutaneous artery and the pulmonary artery. Okay, now as we turn down into the pleural peritoneal cavity, we can see that the left systemic arch and the right systemic arch meet to form, let me peel this away, this single vessel here. This is the dorsal aorta. Okay? So see the dorsal aorta? You have your left and right systemic arch to form the dorsal aorta. The first branch off the dorsal aorta is this big old branch right here. This is the celiaco-mesenteric artery. And it has a celiac branch and a mesenteric branch. Okay? Celiac and mesenteric. The celiac branch will branch into two other branches. Okay? It has a branch here that goes toward the stomach and a branch here that continues on to the liver. Okay? This is the gastric artery and this is the hepatic artery. Gastric goes to the stomach, hepatic goes to the liver. Okay, you guys see that all right? Gastric and hepatic. Now the mesenteric branch has this branch here that goes to the spleen, the splenic artery or splenic artery, and then this branch that goes into the mesentery proper or lesser omentum, which is the mesenteric artery. Okay, so you have celiaco-mesenteric artery that has a celiac branch and a mesenteric branch. The celiac branch has a gastric branch and a hepatic branch. The mesenteric branch continues on to be the mesenteric artery and the splenic artery. All right? Now, after the celiaco-mesenteric artery branches off, the dorsal aorta continues down to the posterior of the animal, and all of these branches leading to the kidney here, the kidneys on either side, those are your renal arteries. Okay? So once we pass the kidneys, the dorsal aorta continues and splits into each leg. We have the right iliac artery and the left iliac artery. Okay? All right, so now the veins. If we take a look at our kidneys, kind of put our kidneys back together here, we see that there's a big vessel right in the middle. That's your post cava or posterior vena cava. And all of these blue vessels coming into the post cava from the kidneys are your renal veins. Okay, so the post cava continues all the way up here into the liver and then will eventually dump into the sinus venosus. Okay, so post cava gathers blood from the renal veins into the liver and then into the sinus venosus. Other vessels to look for. You have from the mesentery here, from all of the jejunal-ileum, this blue vein is the mesenteric vein. From the spleen is the splenic vein. From the stomach is the gastric vein. Okay, and now, remember we cut the ventral abdominal vein here. Okay, so you have your ventral abdominal vein that enters the liver. And from the stomach here, going into the liver, is the hepatic portal vein. Okay, so it's this big giant thing, big giant blue vein coming from the stomach into the liver. Okay? That's it.